Hello and welcome to the latest installment of PSG Talking. I'm your host Ed, and on today's show we're breaking down PSG's win over Stade Reims. We'll look back at PSG's defeat in the Champions League to AC Milan and look ahead to a pivotal stretch of matches that could decide whether the season is a success or not. That's a tongue twister. Before we get to all that, let me remind you, go ahead and subscribe to PSG Talk Extra Time for free. We're over on Substack. You got long-form articles from myself, Jonathan Johnson from CBS Sports, some really good stuff. And then as always, check out the latest PSG news, videos, all that good stuff over on psgtalk.com. All right, let me bring in my guest. Making his triumphant return to the pod, we've got Marc Damon, longtime PSG Talk contributor from the great state of New York. Marc, welcome to the show. Before we get to PSG, have you already decided who you want to be quarterbacking your New York Giants next season?
Not Daniel Jones. So either one of the two top guys in the draft are fine with me. Whether they finish 1, 2, or 3, I think it's pretty safe to say at this point the Giants are going to get a top 3 pick, and you don't ever want to really root for your team to lose, but it's about time to start rooting for them to lose. They need to lose for their own good, and they're doing a great job of it. They don't need my help to lose. So
I think Caleb Williams would be happy with going to New York, so he's the top quarterback, so that'd be good for you guys.
Yeah, well, let's all hope. These things sometimes don't go the way you plan them, but so far so good. But it's here for my monthly check-in. Interesting last week or so in PSG land, I think.
PSG, they go on the road, Stade Reims, where it was the Kylian Mbappé show. The Frenchman scored a spectacular hat trick. And I thought Gianluigi Donnarumma, he kept a clean sheet and was incredible with several key saves. With the win, PSG now clear, top of the league on table. They're ahead of Nice, Monaco, and Lille. Marc, what was your biggest takeaway from the match?
My biggest takeaway from the match is that PSG are still obviously a work in progress. And you go with another new manager, their third manager in 3 years. And I think you're clearly seeing that this is better than the other two that they, better than Pochettino and better than Christophe Galtier, because you feel like you have a manager with a functioning brain on the sideline, and even if he doesn't always get it right initially, which sometimes you just get it wrong, and this was one of those games where besides the goal by Mbappé in the first 2 minutes, PSG played pretty poorly in the first half. Reims were first to every second ball. They recycled the ball well, were able to win it back. They got 19, I think they got somewhere like double-digit shots on goal, which is very rare for a team to do against PSG. Even a good team will rarely get that sort of volume of shots.
Yeah, 19 total shots. 6 of those were on target. They had an XG of 1.4. So that's pretty good, I would say.
And I actually would have expected the XG to be higher than that, to be honest. And I think, this was a game where you get bailed out by your goalkeeper. And Gianluigi Donnarumma has been excellent this year. He's just been excellent. And is he the best at his feet playing the ball? No, he's not. But he's not as awful as he was. He seems to be getting better at it. He's good enough. And I think with the way, PSG are going to be going forward, this is their goalkeeper. They're not going out and getting another one. So, it's good to see him put together performances like this. And it helped that they were able to adjust in the second half. And I think we can, get more into it. But the way that PSG sort of went false 9 in the second half was able to settle things down because they were able to add more numbers to the midfield. They were able to bump in Fabian Ruiz, and they had Vitinha out there playing a more traditional midfield role, which again, I think helped. I don't know why they always feel like they can go with these super attacking lineups against good Ligue 1 teams on the road, but they're just not. They don't work. because it's very hard to break these low blocks down, and when you don't have enough midfielders in there, you're going to cede a lot of the good chances. And once they made that adjustment, it was a much better second half. You get the 2-0 lead, and then you can sort of sit on the game a little bit and eventually get the third goal. Hard to say which one of those two Mbappé goals was better. I thought the second one, where he makes that little in cut and then goes back to the far post, I thought that was probably one of his better goals, and you don't see him score goals like that very often off of his off-ball movement like that. So you just see him starting to just add things that he didn't have before, and it is sort of, he just keeps getting better, and it's, very obvious that he just keeps getting better and better as he goes. And we'll talk about the Milan game and sort of how that sort of devolved in the second half, but it was a good bounce back. I'll say that. And they needed to bounce back. They needed to keep some sort of momentum and some sort of positive feeling, and they were able to do so.
Absolutely. And so I've got a few takeaways from this one, and I'll just pick up on what you last said there. And we've sort of beaten this one into the ground, but it needs to be said again, I suppose, that in the QSI era, we just have a knack for big Champions League nights, whether you win or lose there, and then coming back to domestic play and just laying an egg. And we saw it earlier this season. PSG had to go after a big win. They had to go to Rennes. They were able to get that win, and here they go to another difficult away fixture here and get a 3-0 clean sheet. So say everything you will about PSG's away form this season in the Champions League and how they struggled at Newcastle and AC Milan, but domestically they're going to venues that they typically will struggle, and they're winning pretty convincingly. If I'm not mistaken, I'm just trying to pull up. Yeah, 3-1 was the win at Rennes earlier this season, and then you get this win 3-0. So pretty impressive. And then, Lyon aren't really what they are, but PSG went there and won 4-1 earlier this year as well. So PSG sort of have solved some of their domestic woes that definitely plagued them during the Galtier and Pochettino eras. So they cleaned that up. But my big takeaway, it's got to be Mbappe and Donnarumma. Donnarumma, I've kind of hitched my wagon to him, said that he needed to be the goalkeeper over Navas, caught some flack for that. And understandably so. He did not get off to a great start in his PSG career, but this season he's played really well, going to his old home there with the Donnarummas being thrown at him. I thought he had a pretty good match there against his former team. So, he's continued to improve. We're going to get to the attack. Maybe we should get to that, or let me stick with Mbappe.
Yeah, I think the takeaway on the negative side is that they've invested, and I won't say they've, obviously you go from your attack being Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe to Mbappe, Dembele, Gonzalo Ramos, and Randall Colomwani.
Yeah,
it's a different shift, and it's very much PSG have had to adjust, and it's been good at times, but I think it's the obvious issue is that Kylian is playing as well as he's ever played, and he's producing the goals the way you want him to produce. I would say Ousmane Dembele has been very good. He hasn't really been a goal scorer, but he's driving a lot of what PSG are doing in the attack, and he's been really good on that right-hand side, just creating scoring chances. So I can't complain about anything from Mbappe or Dembele, but it's really the Colomwani Gonzalo Ramos equation here that is questionable. And I think that's where you were going with that. I look at the attack and I go, Gonzalo Ramos had the 2 goals. I believe in the one game he scored 2 goals. Was it in the Champions League against Dort? I'm trying to remember when he scored 2 goals. It did happen, but I remember a game where he did score twice, and I don't remember him scoring really much after that.
Can look it up here real quick.
And Randall Colomwani has been good in some games, but also invisible in others. So I mean, that's really, you are seeing Luis Enrique trying to solve the puzzle here of how to make this attack more than just Kylian Mbappé. And if he doesn't score, they don't have a chance. And that's really been a problem for a while now. And
very much so, yes.
I think, you saw it at the very beginning of the year that he played Marco Asensio as a false nine, and that had a little bit of success.
It did.
Then Asensio got hurt, and Kang-In Lee went off to the Asian games or whatever they call them. They didn't have him for a month. And Kang-In Lee got hurt ahead of time, so they didn't really have him for a month and a half. So you saw in the second half, they moved Kang-In Lee into the false nine, and you played Dembele and Mbappe off the wings, and that seemed to just create more space, and it sort of threw Reims off of who they, what they were doing in the first half and how they were sort of taking away what PSG wanted to do. It was a good tactical adjustment, but I don't know how much I want to rely on false nines in big Champions League matches when you really do need to have all your goal scorers, all of your three best goal scorers out there to force teams to have to defend that.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And I obviously think that the Gonzalo Ramos thing is sort of the more, I think he's been the more suspect of the two when it comes to him and Kolo Muani. I think Kolo Muani he's been fine. There's a few chances he's missed on occasion, but he's been able to score some goals. He can, when you're ahead and when you're playing sort of counter ball when you're ahead, which is what this team wants to do, Kolo Muani sort of fits into that. And I don't know what right now Gonzalo Ramos can do to get himself in this lineup. Because it seems like the plan B is now, maybe even the plan A is to go false nine for a while. Especially with Asensio coming back, you may see Gonzalo Ramos really not play much at all going forward this season. And that's a weird one because I think Gonzalo Ramos is an excellent player, and I think he's an excellent number 9, and he sort of brings that Cavani style that I think PSG have missed, that sort of those gritty kind of goals, but it doesn't seem like he's confident in what he's doing. It doesn't seem like he's making the sort of effective runs, and he's not getting the kind of service. And there's some stats that show that PSG are one of the worst sort of the big, of the big teams in the top 5 leagues, are one of the worst teams at generating chances off of crosses. And that doesn't surprise me. They've been bad at that for a while. And that goes back to sort of, they have not been good at that for, I would say, years. I don't think that that's sort of a new phenomenon that's developed. And I think that, Lucas Hernandez is a decent crosser. Dembele is a decent crosser, but it's not, I would say, the best thing he does. And Hakimi as a fullback is not really a crosser either, and neither is Nuno Mendes when he comes back. So there's not, I think, a very logical way that PSG are all of a sudden going to get better at crosses. Like what you saw in the AC Milan game, and I think where sort of Luis Enrique figured something out was that Kang-In Lee, who I struggle with him, and cut me off if I'm going on too long, but I struggle with him because he doesn't play any defense. He's not going to play. He's like Messi. He's not going to play defense at all.
Sells as many jerseys as Messi too, probably.
I think so, but in certain situations, like if you play him in the right position, he can be maybe one of PSG's, if not PSG's only sort of generator of chances from the middle of the field. Like you notice, again, PSG play a lot of their chances are coming from the outside, whether it be the fullbacks cutting in or whether it be Mbappe cutting in. But just a guy in the middle of the field generating chances. Like Kang-In Lee was actually doing that for them in that Milan game. And, he was the guy that almost got them that tying goal in the second half. I think it either hit the post or it was just right outside the post. But, like, they're going to have to figure out which combination works and in which situations to use them, because they haven't figured that out yet. And that's going to be a really difficult process, because you're going to have a lot of guys with a lot of feelings hurt that aren't going to get playing time, that are used to playing a lot. And Luis Enrique is going to have to be ruthless about who he plays and who he doesn't. And he's going to have to be confident in what he's putting together and not sort of be wishy-washy about it, or, if somebody's not producing, they're not going to be out there. You know what I mean? Like, and right now it looks like that's Gonzalo Ramos, to be honest.
We had that era where you just played no matter what, and that was with Neymar and Messi and some of the other big names. And so we need to get away from that. And you're right, if you're not producing. Couple of things here with Ramos. Signed, I'm just looking here, 65 million euro from Benfica to PSG. That's a big chunk of change to have for a player that you're subbing off at halftime against Stade Auguste because he's not producing. In a game like that, you expect him to be doing something. And to be honest, I actually forgot he was even out on the pitch. I think it's more to do like what you're saying. There's just not a lot of chances being created. He's not getting that service. It's something that we've talked about on the show before. We've had Ethan from PSG Fan Club Boise. We talk about, like, do PSG even practice corners because they're just so bad at it and they don't have the players. And I was just looking, like, how many goals are actually scored from crosses to begin with? And I just did a quick search, and this was from 2017. So, but I think in general, and it says that, 18.6 crosses per match, the top European teams, but only 1 in every 64 crosses is directly translated into a goal. So there's a lot of emphasis on, we got to get the ball in the box, we got to cross. And sure, that maybe that applies pressure, but really when it comes to goals, it doesn't really result. So maybe Luis Enrique might be wise to get away from that strategy, use the wings a little bit more and overlapping runs and maybe getting a more creative player in midfield. I've never been sold on, like, got to have crosses in the box. You have to have a Cavani in there to get on the end of it. I just don't know if that's the way PSG need to play.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the way PSG have to play either.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know if we want to go into the Milan game, when you're down 2-1 and you're playing against a team that is really sort of locking you down, and you're not generating chances through sort of your passing patterns, like, you have to have the ability to cross, even if it's not always the number one option. In a game like that, you need to be able to generate dangerous situations. Sometimes you have to throw the analytics out the window and go, we're just going to put a ball in and hope it bangs around and hits some people and somebody just shuffles it in the back of the net.
The hockey tactic. Just throw the puck at the net. It'll get in there.
Yes, as I'm currently watching my beloved Rangers take the lead here.
Or maybe, we saw last year with Gaultier, we would constantly get killed on those diagonal long passes or, balls over the top. I think that might be more of a strategy.
The strategy has to be, you have to adapt to the game you're playing. So you can't fall behind 2-1 in the second half and then have no shot of being able to get yourself a goal, because you can't, vary your attack enough to, and you're not good enough at crossing the ball. Like, again, it's not something you always have to do, but it's something in a situation like that where it really comes in handy to have a guy who can just get you a goal. And I was saying this a little bit on Twitter during that game. I'm like, they're taking Mbappé out of the game. And it's not hard to take him out of the game if you're down and you have to, attack an 8-9 man box, right? Like, Kylian has to dribble through 2-3 guys. And there were times where Milan were just double and triple teaming him. And there was no way through that. So you had to sort of do something else. And you just saw the limitations. Like, and you see it. PSG are really, and I think they're going to be a really good front-running kind of team. And this is what they are when they're at their best, where they get a lead. And this is a lot of teams, but I think PSG in particular, because of the way they counter, they're going to get a lead They're going to force the other team to get out of their game plan and attack them. And then you generate chances off the counter and you just start opening up the space.
So why don't we see more, especially in the Champions League, where they just opening whistle at Newcastle, you go for it. You try to get that early goal. I don't really see that too much. But you're right. I agree with you.
I think they did that against Milan, and I thought they got the first goal, sort of against the run, but not totally against the run of play.
Skriniar with the wide open header off the cross, as we say, they don't really cross.
I think it was on a corner. I think they got it on a corner, but
that's right, yeah.
But my point would be, Milan scored 2 seconds into that, 2 minutes after that, so that sort of took away any ability for them to,
the front running was short-lived.
Yes, exactly. But you see what happens when PSG can get ahead, when they got ahead of AC. It's easier to do that at home. And football is one of those weird sports where sometimes I think the home and road stuff is overrated, but I don't think it's overrated in football. I think it's vastly underrated how much better you play at home as opposed to when you're on the road, especially with a young team like PSG who are still learning. You have to understand something. A lot of those guys have never played significant major Champions League minutes before. Some of them have, some of them haven't, in different contexts. Playing for PSG in the Champions League is different than playing for Benfica in the Champions League. It's just a different thing. The expectations are different. The pressure's different. It's just a different.
In that game, Zaire-Emery, 17 years old. Ugarte come from Sporting. He probably, doesn't have that. Vitinha as well. Even Colomwani coming from Frankfurt. I don't know how many massive matches.
It's different. It's a different level. You're playing it's much pressure filled on the road in these big, legendary stadiums. It's a very tough, situation to put those kids in, and they have to learn. But to me, the weird part, and I think the sort of unforgivable part, the part where I think that I hope that Luis Enrique is seriously going at his team about. It happened against Newcastle, and it happened against AC Milan, and you may know where I'm going with this. There was a ball in the box same thing against Newcastle, but I'll describe the AC Milan one because it's more recent. Ball goes in the box with Rafael Leao. He goes for a header. The ball goes out of the box, and Rafael Leao goes down.
So did he?
And just sit. Yeah. And for the second time, PSG just stop. They stop playing. And literally, an AC Milan player is able to run onto the ball with nobody playing him, put a cross in, Skriniar's standing there, and Olivier Giroud just jumps over him and puts a header in. It's a very weird thing that you don't see happen all the time. You know what I mean? You don't see teams just stop playing in a major professional football match.
You're professional footballers. Play to the whistle. This is like elementary school stuff. Yeah. Come on.
No, it's middle school football where you just sort of stop because you're not sure what you're doing. And I find it incredibly bizarre. And the problem is we don't have a professional actual football media in France that will ask that question. I don't think anyone asked it. Did you remember anyone asking that question?
No, we don't have a functioning...
No, why would they ask that question? They probably were asking about if Kylian Mbappé is going to Real Madrid for the 80th time.
Right.
But nobody asks, why are your players stopping in the middle of plays? When the ball is in a dangerous area, why are they stopping and looking for the ref to call a penalty or a foul or whatever? It's completely ridiculous.
Completely agree.
It's unprofessional. even more than that. It's completely unprofessional, and I'm just you hope that over time that stuff doesn't happen anymore, and that these younger players learn from those sort of clear and obvious mistakes, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's weird, like it's the back line again. Probably your most experienced part of your team that is, ironically enough, making these mistakes.
That's what I want to talk about. Just to go back to the Reims match, we mentioned that they had 19 total shots, 6 on target, the XG of 1.4. It seems like with Luis Enrique, the Marquinhos and Skriniar center back pairing is what you're going to go with. We saw Soler back there and Mukiele. He's kind of moving things around in this match, but that back line, the back four, it's not doing it for me. They don't give you a whole lot of confidence. We saw against Milan, they gave up a goal. We saw here it was a clean sheet, but that's only because Donnarumma was, to use another hockey, was standing on his head there, making incredible saves. We saw against Newcastle, just got completely just blitzed by their players, and our defense had no. They just looked like they had never played before. They were just, a deer in headlights. So what are we going to do with this back line? What do you have a preferred back four? Do we need another signing in January? What do you think?
I think part of it is your fullbacks are really offensive. So it's, you're not playing with overly defensive fullbacks. So that sort of puts more pressure on the two center backs, but I've sort of liked Skriniar. I think Skriniar's been good. I think Skriniar is good in the air. I think he's good in the air in the middle of the field, positioning himself. He rarely gets, for a guy that's not very fast, he rarely gets beat. He's usually in decent position.
That is the understatement of the year. Not very fast. He is
no, but he's not.
slow.
But my point is, you can. Thiago Silva was not fast. I want to make people remember that. Thiago Silva, I'm not saying he's directly like Thiago Silva, but we probably haven't had a guy with sort of the kind of instincts defensively since that. And I do think he's very good. And I think he's underrated, and I think he doesn't make the sort of flashy plays, but positionally he has been very sound for this team. And I don't think he's been the problem. I think the problem's the other guy.
The goal with that Giroud scored, I do blame Skriniar. He was just standing there looking around, and Giroud just went right over his back and scored.
But in general, I don't blame him.
Yeah.
The problem is the other guy, who's for some reason is still the captain of this team, and I can't understand it. I that's the one where I'm like, they have to get the captaincy off this guy. Either get rid of him or get the captaincy off of him. Whatever
I think he goes the next summer. I think in the transfer window, I think a bit from
because I'm sorry, there's just too much. There's too much failure there, and I don't want to put it all on Marquinhos because that would be unfair. But he feels to me like a symbol of that failure.
He's the last man standing.
He really is.
From the previous era.
I don't put that failure on Kylian because Kylian's scoring 30 goals a year. I don't put that failure on, some of those younger guys. Marquinhos has been there forever. He's seen all of it. And when everyone's healthy. Let's look at this. When everyone's healthy, you're gonna have Nuno Mendes as the left back. You're gonna have Hakimi as the right back. You're gonna have Skriniar as the other one of the center backs, and then you have Presnel Kimpembe and Lucas Hernandez and Nord Mukiele.
Danilo can play a little bit of center back.
Danilo can play a little. I'm at a point where it's like, if Presnel is healthy, I'd like to see him playing alongside Skriniar because I think he can offer you a little more athleticism. So you don't sort of have the two old guys in the back, or not even that Skriniar's old, but you get a little speed so that one of those, like, you want your center backs to complement each other. And I feel like they don't, like Skriniar and Marquinhos don't complement each other. And I like what Skriniar does better than what Marquinhos does. I like, if you put a sort of a younger, faster center back next to Milan Skriniar, I think you'll be okay. You know what I mean? Like, I think you'll be okay.
We don't know. I mean, he's coming off Kimpembe.
You
Just
don't know. You
we
really
don't know
don't, and
with
that's
him.
the. But I do think this should be Marquinhos' last season at PSG. I think
Yeah,
it's pretty obvious at this point that, like, whatever it is, he's just not that guy. Like, he definitely shouldn't be the captain. Like, I think it's pretty obvious he shouldn't be the captain of the team. Like that, I think that was a mistake when they gave it to him. In hindsight,
yeah.
I think it was a mistake that they gave it to him. And I just think this team needs, it's a new era of PSG, and I feel like you don't want the old guard leadership, you know, with that. Like you want new leaders.
Completely agree. I think Marquinhos, could he join Verratti in the Qatar league, or does he go to the Saudi league? But I think that's probably going to be his next destination. We'll ride out the season. We'll give him a good send off. But I think as the season winds down, you're going to start hearing some rumors about his future. I think the solution is right there in Ligue 1. You sign Lenny Yoro over in Lille. I think that's the player you get. 6'3", 18 years old. As you have this youth movement in PSG, you bring him in, you pair him with Skriniar, a veteran. You can teach him a thing or two. I love that pairing. I think that's where you got to go if PSG can sign him. But he's getting some attraction from Premier League clubs and other places. So the defense is certainly an issue. Hopefully they can get that sorted out. It definitely gives me heart palpitations watching it. I want to ask you one more question about the rematch, and then we'll switch real quick to the AC Milan match. Afterwards, Luis Enrique had this quote: "I'm not really happy with Kylian Mbappé today. On the goals, I have nothing to say, but he can help the team more in a different way. I'll talk to him about it first. I'll never tell you what it is because it's private. Kylian is one of the best in the world, but we need more. We want him to do more things." Mark,
Do
kind
you
of
do, do you
read
do
through.
you think he was do you think he was being a little bit tongue in cheek there?
Mm, maybe a little bit with the "I'll never tell you." But I do think he maybe wants more out of him. I mean, we saw against AC Milan, Kylian Mbappe was being double and triple teamed, and he wasn't able to really find a teammate who was trying to beat 2-3 players. So maybe he does want more out of him. But
Yeah.
read through the lines here. I mean, what
Well,
is Luis Enrique getting at?
I'll say this as a general point. I think if you can't criticize your top guy, then you're in trouble. And I think PSG are. It's good to see that Luis Enrique can do that and feels comfortable doing that. Like, Tuchel was fairly comfortable doing that, but like, you like to see that that they can, go at, not go at, but like just hold your best players to the highest possible standard. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I don't think he did it in like a mean, I'm gonna call you out kind of way. I think it was more tongue in cheek, but I think he got the general message across. I think the point was made, whatever that point needed to be. So I don't think there's much to that, to be honest. And I think Kylian is very capable of dealing with criticism. I don't think it's this big deal. And I think the more I think PSG fans and media sort of understand that this is sort of how functional, healthy teams work, the better. You know what I mean? Like I do. I'd like to see this team act like a functional unit for once.
That's how
And
Pep Guardiola
functional
runs
units are,
things at Manchester City. He'll bench a player who criticizes if he thinks it needs it. He knows his players, and I think Luis Enrique in just being around Mbappe probably knows,
yeah.
like, hey, this kid can take a little constructive criticism.
Yeah. You don't have to walk on eggshells with these guys. They're professionals. Killian's almost 25 years old at this point. Like he should be able to deal with this kind of stuff in my opinion.
I agree. All right, Mark, you ready to talk a little Champions League? I
Yeah, we
want to
did a
get
little bit, but we'll get into it a little more, I guess.
yeah. I want to get your take on the Milan loss, and then looking ahead. How do you see the matches against? We got Newcastle at home, Dortmund away. I want to know how you think they're going to play out. Can PSG advance? How confident are you? So just take all of those and just run with the Champions League and all things PSG in the Champions League. Go for it.
Um I didn't say I thought the Milan loss might have been a little worse than it was. I thought maybe I thought they showed up halfway decently. They were just, again, those brain farts and stuff, but it's a very difficult it's a very difficult thing when you're not an experienced team and you're going on the road to pull these wins out. And it really, honestly, PSG are basically about where I expected them to be. I really didn't expect it to be much more than that. Like, I didn't expect this team to all of a sudden just show that they're, a top team in Europe right away in the first year of a new system. Right? Like, I didn't expect that.
What did you think about the officiating? Because we had the podcast and I thought, one goalkeeper having to deal with things being thrown at them in the middle of a match during like a free kick, I thought that was not appropriate. And the fact that AC Milan didn't have a recorded foul till the 66th minute or whatever it was after an hour, that seems a little suspect. I thought the officiating is not why PSG lost, but certainly aided AC Milan having the performance they did.
Certainly did. I thought the officiating in the Milan game was awful. I thought it was god-awful. I thought it was cynical. I thought it was ridiculous that a guy can say that you could literally basically not call a foul on one team until the 65th minute of the game. It really stretches credulity. And I'm not saying that they were on the take or anything, but I'm saying is like PSG were playing. It felt like sometimes, and I do see this in some circumstances, and this is sort of what happened with the Dennis Ayetkin 6-1 game, where the ref just gets caught up in the atmosphere, and they just start like calling the game in the flow and sort of like, you know what I mean? You got what I'm saying, right? Like they just get caught up in being in that atmosphere, so they start hearing the crowd and they start anticipating the fouls. It's like it's human instinct. And I thought the official, it didn't, I think, overly determine the outcome of the game. It wasn't egregious to that extent. It's not like they were taking goals off it's not like they were, erasing goals or calling penalties. And, it sort of screwed up PSG's rhythm. And I thought it became very hard for PSG to sort of play aggressively when pretty much everything they did was a foul.
Well, and I thought with the Giroud goal, everyone stopped playing, which you never want to do. But I thought certainly, I think it was Leao missed the ball, takes out Hakimi. That should have been a clear foul, and it wasn't. And we see what it leads to. So something like that, PSG shouldn't have stopped playing, but the official should have done his job. And that's why I said earlier, PSG just need to just stop. You're not going to get the calls ever in this tournament. You just never. It's going to go against you. Just go into the match with the mentality that you're down a goal and just suck it up and play through these things. You got to play to the whistle. Keep playing. Don't get overly emotional. Things are not going to go your way. We've been doing this for how many years? It never goes our way. From the draw to what goes on in the matches, it never goes our way. And you have to just accept that. No matter who the players are. We've changed the squad over year after year. Some things never change though. And it's the bad calls.
But I wouldn't say this would be one of those situations. I think this was just more.
Yeah.
You're on the road in the San Siro. You're just not going to get calls on the road in the San Siro. No matter who you are.
Right.
Seriously, no matter who you are, you're not getting calls on the road in the San Siro. It's just not going to happen. So you just have to live. You have to live with that. You do have to. There is a certain degree of you have to live with that. That outcome.
Yeah.
But I think the bigger issue here is PSG are in the exact kind. For this kind of team, this is sort of the kind of situation I expected them to be in. And to be fair, really what PSG have to do is beat Newcastle.
Yeah, at home, where they don't lose.
Beat Newcastle at home. That's what you have to do. And if you can't do that, you probably don't deserve to go through, to be honest. So you have to beat Newcastle at home, which the way Newcastle is playing seems to be very doable. And you imagine that Newcastle are going to bunker in, unlike how they played at home. They're going to bunker in, and PSG are going to have their opportunities. They're going to have their chances, and they're going to have to take advantage of those chances and opportunities.
Yeah, this is going to be playing like a league on the side. Newcastle are going to be missing some of the players that were out there in that first match where PSG just got blown away. But yeah, they're going to be sitting back, and that's exactly what we've been struggling with, right? And you're saying, we got to cross the ball, but we don't really have a target person. So, and I don't know if Gonzalo Ramos has really earned a starting place, but maybe in that match he makes sense. He could get on the end of a cross. It's going to be really, really tricky. I could see that one. Maybe PSG escape 1-0. But yeah, Newcastle are going to be just.
And this is going to be weird because it's really they're not in a terrible spot, because if Dortmund beats Milan and PSG beats Newcastle, both PSG and Dortmund are through, and then they play for first place the following game.
Yeah, they can just kick the ball around in a circle.
Just win the game.
Just win.
Because even if they win the game, they at least get, without anything else happening, you at least guarantee yourself Europa League.
Which we don't really.
Which I want to say this, and I want to make this point. I think it's very clear to make this point. That is a distinct possibility here, and I don't want people to, get blindsided by the fact that PSG could very easily be playing in the Europa League in February. And the fact of the matter is that will not be the end of the world. You don't have to fire the manager. You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to get rid of Luis Campos. You don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. You can accept that fate. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know if Mbappé is going to be sticking around if we're in Europa League. I don't know if that's a project he wants to sign up for, but we may not have him anyway after the season anyway. But I'm with you. I think that if PSG lose, or they don't get the, maybe it's a draw against Newcastle at the Parc des Princes. I think if they need to go to Dortmund needing a win to secure them advancing, I don't like their chances. If they go to Dortmund,
I do not like their chances.
Yeah, but if they just need a result or a win to maybe get first place, I think that's, with all that pressure on this young team, no. If we need to go to get there to get a win to advance, just pack our bags for the Europa League. I just don't like their chances.
I agree. I do not like their chances after that.
And it seems like Dortmund are very much on the ascension too.
The good news is they should be able to beat Newcastle at home. That's the good news.
We've got the international break. You never know what's going to happen during that. Injuries, fatigue. Yeah. It's always a weird time. I don't know why we have them in the midst of the biggest club tournament in the world, but so be it. PSG have to deal with the international break. Got a difficult stretch of matches. So after the break, PSG are going to host Monaco. That's a big game. Then the Newcastle match we've already talked about. Then you get a little bit of a break. You go against Le Havre and Nantes, kind of a little warm up, get your mind right, score some goals, and then you got to go to Dortmund, where their Champions League lives could be on the line. Give me a prediction with all of those matches. Let's say after the Dortmund, after the group stage, Mark, where do you think PSG are going to stand both domestically and in the Champions League?
Well, I think what's going to happen is that PSG are going to be first in their domestic league, and I think they're going to finish second in their group. That would be my opinion, because I still put money on them being able to beat Newcastle at home. I still think they're a really good home team. PSG are a very good home team. I don't see a world where they lose that. I just don't see that happening. And I'm usually the more pessimistic one in these situations. I don't see them losing to Newcastle.
I've been very confident on Twitter saying, let's run that back in Paris, because you're right. PSG are very, very good, especially in the Champions League at home. I think that place is going to be rocking. PSG will know what Newcastle did to them. They'll want revenge. And we'll see. If they finish second, though, PSG could go up against a Manchester City who have already qualified. If they finish first, maybe PSG will get matched up with Leipzig with Xavi Simons. That could be interesting. A lot of really, really interesting matchups if PSG could just get to the knockout stage. I would put my confidence, I'm probably around like 75, 80% positive that they're going to advance, but this is football. You never know. And we talked about the refereeing. You really never know how this thing's going to play out. Mark, any final words before we let you run here?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything we wanted to cover.
We did, yes. Thank you so much again for coming on, and thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, just go ahead and leave us a review. Always enjoy reading those. And, of course, we're on Substack and psgtalk.com, as I mentioned at the top of the show. All right, Mark, with that, thank you so much. Allez, PSG.
Au revoir for now.